Hi, welcome back to Aetheral Space 5.24. I'm your Tanhony today, Tanhony.
And I'm your Darnell, Jermaine.
Oh, you're not the usual Darnell. Who the hell are you? Points gun.
I'm Saint Germain. Ooh, I think I'll travel back in time and make the magical things.
Wow, this guy. He knows all the Germain lore.
I know nothing about Saint Germain.
He's not Saint Germain, he's the Count of Saint Germain. It's a bit different.
The Count of Saint Germain. This is episode 20. No, this is 5.24 Aflame. I'm starting to lose myself.
He's doing
I've got an apostrophe down here in swamps.
I'm sorry. I didn't. Thank you.
This guy needs to edit his work. You know what I'm saying?
How about I edit your fucking face?
Would you even, or would you leave me to edit your face?
We don't need to argue.
Or edit my face. Hamilton seems to approve our new thumbnail, but I need to go on D&D to record. You ready?
Yeah, let's play some Dungeons and Dragons.
Alright, wow, a 20, crit start! The world burst into flame. Bruno's body moved before his mind could register what was happening. Hands thrusting out to either side. A force field being projected around himself within half a second. 3 layers of his strongest protections. He knew instinctively that he needed those to survive this threat. This body was used to surviving, after all. Bruno winced as the deafening sound of the explosion rang into his ears. It was muffled slightly by the shields, but still loud as all hell. The second after it faded, after the fire outside his shield scattered away, the sound was replaced by a high-pitched ringing, drowning out everything else. He felt a metal hand clap down on his shoulder. And when Bruno turned his head, he saw Skipper standing there, voicelessly mouthing something. No, that wasn't quite right. He was speaking perfectly normally. Bruno just couldn't hear him. Reading lips was a skill the Sed had been quite eager to teach, though. Bruno caught scraps of silent speech through Skipper's lightning-fast jabbering. Ambush! Good job! To God! Be ready! Bruno's mind caught up to his instinctive movements, and the situation became obvious, the puzzle pieces fitting together completely. They'd been ambushed. An enemy had taken advantage of the swamp's explosive qualities to try and blow them to hell. Bruno had managed to protect himself and Skipper with his force fields, but... "Where's Mr. Dragon, Bruno?" Serena asked innocently, her inner dialogue unaffected by Bruno's current hearing impairment. "I don't see him anywhere." Bruno's eyes widened. Shit! He'd protected Skipper without even thinking about it, but Dragon had been just the tiniest bit further away from the two of them. He realized now that he'd heard Dragon just before the explosion went off. He'd shouted scatter, but now that the fiery explosion had once again faded, the cogitant was nowhere to be seen. Wait, so there's not an ongoing fire, it was just a quick boom?
It's a boom, yeah. That burns away,
Okay, so there's no, Gotcha. Where was he? In pieces, most likely, said a traitorously sensible thought. No, Bruno rejected that. His eyes flicked down to the ground where charred corpses were already floating face down. If Dragon had died in that explosion, his body would have been visible, identifiable from size at least. None of the bodies here looked anything like the cogitant, though. He was still alive. He had to be. Popcorn, because I'm very tired.
Dragon Hadrian was still alive, somehow. He stuck his head up out of the water, gasping for breath, doing his best to wade in place. The area it ended in was a little bit deeper. If he stood on the tip of his toes, he'd only end up barely touching the bottom. He couldn't panic, though. There was no way he could panic. More attacks would be coming before long. An aerial opponent like Akamanto had no reason to hold back, since they wouldn't be caught in Essendon blast themselves. First course of action was to regroup with the others. Dragon looked to arm Riley, trying to spot Bruno and Skipper, but the fog here was even thicker than it had been before. He'd used his new technique to save himself from the explosion, but as a result he hadn't been able to see where exactly his comrades had gone. Should he call out?
What was his new technique again?
We don't know. Should he call out? No. There could be other enemies around, and he didn't want to stand out as a target. For the time being, the fog acted as protection just as much of an obstacle. He couldn't stay here forever, though, either. Sooner or later he'd end up caught in an explosion. He had to get moving, regardless of the direction. Dragon went to kick off the ground, only to stop when he felt a cold hand seize him tightly by the wrist. He whirled around, ready to fire a Gemini shotgun right through his face of enemy, only to stop when he recognised the face of Lily Aubrasher. She was in a worse state than him. Shorter, her mouth barely managing to stay above the filthy swamp water. "Help!" she gasped, hacking back up a tiny fish thing that quickly swam away. "Gonna die!" She'd acted like such a hard-ass that Dragon had almost forgotten she was pretty much just a kid. It wasn't like he felt bad for anything, but it would bother him if he didn't help her. Infusing his arms with Aether, he grabbed her and lifted her up, giving her some more room to breathe. Lily spat whatever swamp water remained back down to the source. She gasped for breath. What happened? She rasped, wiping her mouth clean. What the hell happened? Told you this was a shit plan, Dragon grunted, infusing the tips of his toes with Aether to keep his stance steady. Ghast's guardian entity was waiting for us, dropped a piece of flaming cloth right on her head to cause an explosion. Fuck, Lily hissed. Where's everyone else? As Dragon waded backwards, he found his feet making contact once more with dirt, the ground rising up into some kind of shore. With a heave of an Aether-enhanced effort, he pulled Lily up onto solid ground as well, two of them falling back as they caught their breath. He reached down and massaged his legs. He'd never been much of a swimmer, and wading in place for so long had done a number on him. Where's everyone else? Lily repeated, getting up on their feet, pulling a wooden sword out of its sheath. They hadn't want to risk sparking some kind of explosion, so before setting out they replaced their metal weapons with wooden equivalents. Dragon couldn't speak for how effective they'd actually be, but the presence of an actual weapon served as a pretty good placebo all the same. Personally, Dragon would stick to his Aether any day. The repeated question finally registering in his brain, Dragon answered as best as he could. No clue. I said to scatter, so there's no telling which direction they went. Or if they're even still alive. He didn't voice that last part, even he had a little more tact than that. Or if they're even still alive, Lily muttered. Welp. Lily got to her feet, squinted as she struggled to peer through the veil of fog that surrounded them. As she turned on the spot, she pointed her sword in front of herself protectively, like she was some kind of living compass. Our first priority should be regrouping, she muttered. The spot they just got us in was fairly clear, so they could see it from the sky. If we move for the frog like we are now, they won't be able to spot our location. Dragon got to his feet too. We won't be able to spot our location either, though. How am I meant to know which way will lead us out the swamp? Lily bit her thumb as she kept turning, clearly unable to make anything out. We'll just have to play it by ear, I guess. The most important thing is as many people as possible stay alive. It seems we're doing nothing but playing it by ear. Lily shot him a glare. In the haze of the swamp, it was the most clear thing he could make out. You don't need to be an asshole about it. Dragon wiped away as much of the mud on his hands on his pants as he could. I'm not being an asshole, it's a totally legitimate complaint. Phrased in the manner of an asshole. You don't need to... Popcorn.
Gemini shotgun! The spear of blue light shot past Lily, striking the figure emerging from the fog just behind her. The man was hit in the throat, his wooden spear slipping from between his fingers as he fell backwards into the water, floating on the filthy surface for a moment before sinking beneath. And the moment before he bobbed out of sight, Dragon got a good look at him. Without a doubt, he was wearing the uniform of a regulator troop. Lily whirled around in shock, catching a glimpse of only the man's hand before it was submerged. "How'd you know he wasn't one of ours?" she muttered. "Easy," Dragon replied, his blue aether dying down. "If he was one of ours, he would have been calling out for his friends like an idiot. He'd have no reason to be sneaking up." This meant that they were in more danger than he'd first thought, though. The regulators had sent troops in to finish them off just in case the initial explosion hadn't been enough. Oh, were they waiting in the water? He'd been entertaining the idea of staying in these small groups and trying to find their way out of the swamps that way, but going for that plan now would only entail making themselves easy targets. Lily had the same thought, it seemed. "What about the others?" she asked. "We were only safe because of your aether. It'll turn into a real fight for them." It depended on the locations of Skipper, Bruno, and Serena. They wouldn't have any trouble dealing with these assholes, so any groups that included them were probably safe. Any of the other rebels, though? His train of thought was suddenly derailed by the boom of a distant explosion. Of course, there was no reason for Akamanto to stop at triggering only one explosion. He could just keep dropping fire down on them as much as he pleased while the troops picked off any survivors. I'm assuming the troops are surviving by hiding in the water. A ruthless strategy, but an effective one. Or how else would they survive the explosions? Or is Akamanto just, like, firebombing without care?
Maybe a combination.
The words came hesitantly out of his mouth. "We still need to regroup, I guess, but that wasn't so easy either. There were two means by which he could send out a signal that the others could follow. Visually, by launching a Gemini shotgun up at the sky, or audibly, by screaming an aether-infused scream. What about an aether ping that only other aether users would know? He should do that. Neither option was very appealing. They'd alert that ghost up into the sky.
Well, that only alerts, like, the other people who can use aether. He's trying to, like, get everyone together.
Yeah, but he could go from there because Skipper would protect him while he shouted. Ghost up into the sky to his location just as much as it would signal his allies, and he very much doubted that Akamanto would pass up the opportunity to eliminate any Aether users he became aware of. So long as that asshole was lurking in the sky, trying to regroup would only end with all of their deaths. It was only... Oh, here we go. It was only fitting that rats would try to flee through nature's sewer. Akamanto floated in the heavens as it observed the turmoil below, cloak waving around it in the sun, in the wind. The sun was shining high in the sky, yet none of that divine light pierced the fog below. So undeserving were its inhabitants. Only small slivers of visibility were present in that abyssal cloud, through which the rustle of furtive movement could occasionally be seen, the movement of the enemy. It was nothing more than the invitation for execution. Akamanto's eyes locked onto the shift of a cloak far below, and without even a moment of undue hesitation, he dropped another flaming strip of cloth. It spiraled down towards the ground like a celebratory wreath, and just before it pierced the veil of clouds, exploded into holy fire, consuming whatever unfortunate deviant happened to be lurking below. There was always the possibility that was one of Garth's men, too. They were easily replaceable. It would be worth losing a few of those specimens for the sake of eliminating this threat. This threat to XK-12's peace had been a near constant presence throughout Akamanto's tenure. Every head of the regulators had been required to fight against this enemy, and every one of them had achieved at least a temporary victory. The enemy was insidious, though. So long as the slightest trace of their ideology remained, they would once again reappear. The conflict had never escalated to this level before, however. The star from the hell outside had changed things irreversibly. It had made this battle more vital, to be sure, but it had also created an unprecedented opportunity to annihilate the enemy once and for all. They would kill these rebels. They would kill rebellion itself. And once that was done, there could be peace. Boom! Boom! Akamanto's ears pricked up. It hadn't created those explosions. They were more like concussive blasts than the incendiary judgment it had been raining down. Was something else happening down there? Something it hadn't foreseen. It saw something down below. A tiny shape down on the ground was quickly becoming bigger, becoming humanoid rather than a dot, becoming a man rather than a silhouette, becoming a threat rather than an annoyance. A man in a fluttering green coat, an incongruous smile scarring his face. Some kind of force was being fired out through those palms of his hands, propelling him up into the sky. Akamanto felt hot anger rise up from his skin as it saw those green sparks. Aether. Hey, buddy, the interloper grinned. Good enough, but notice you were stuck all the way up here. I'll help you down, yeah? Hog bait shotgun. Ba-da-ba-ba. And with that, Skipper killed Akamanto. The end. Another good chapter, but I just wish there was more to it. It was a bit too short.
My illness hit halfway between this one.
Well, maybe you should just not get sick, idiot.
Grabs you by the throat.
Ever thought about that? Then you could be, then you'd be more productive at work too. TikTok, time thief.
You fucker. He betrayed him.
Betrayed him. Good fortune moment. Alright, guys. Thanks for watching Aetheral Space 5.24. If you like the episode, if you like Aetheral Space, you already know what to do. I'm not even going to say it!
Leave a review on Roll Rush.
By now. Oh, and here's a new commandant I just thought of. Tell your friends about Aetheral Space. Spread the word. The series needs to be known by all.
Yeah.
Tell your friends if they like sci-fi, if they like Star Wars, if they like young adult novels and fiction. Fucking tell them about Aetheral Space. Tell them how good it is. And how free it is to listen to or read themselves. Crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's it. Anything from you, Tan?
That's it as well. You pretty much summed it all up.
Alright. Bye!
Bye!